10 years ago, when I started homeschooling, I never would have imagined that our homeschool journey would have taken us all over the world. I'm here to share my story in hopes to inspire others that homeschooling has no boundaries. Stick around. Hi there, my name is Melissa Branham and I am the mom of the WanderStruck.Family. I travel around the country sharing stories of homeschool moms and homeschool families in hopes to inspire others along their journey. Whether you're new to homeschooling, considering homeschooling, or a veteran of homeschool, I hope that you can find inspiration and glean some ideas off of myself and the others that I share stories of. If you haven't followed us yet, go ahead and click that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of all of our upcoming videos so that you don't miss anything along our journey. But for starters, here's our story. Just over 10 years ago, I had a daughter in kindergarten, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and I was pregnant due anytime. We put our daughter into kindergarten, not thinking about anything other than just public school. We lived in a neighborhood that had great rated schools, and so we enrolled her and off she went. It was about halfway through the school year that I realized it wasn't the best fit for her and started talking to my husband about alternate ideas. We talked about moving her to a different school. We talked about renting our house out and moving an hour across town so that we could rent a house over there so that we could send her to a charter school that was a classical charter school on the other side of town, which we realized was crazy. And if we were going to do that and go through that kind of extreme move, maybe we should try something a little closer to home before we went through such extreme changes, which is when we decided to start looking into homeschooling. I didn't know anything about homeschooling. I didn't know anybody other than a cousin who had kids that homeschooled, but her kids were now in high school and almost out of the house, and I didn't know where to start. I felt super overwhelmed, and I took to the internet and felt like I got hit in the face with a fire hydrant. There was so much information out there, and I didn't know where to begin. I have since developed 5 steps that I suggest to all new homeschool parents to follow when they're starting off homeschooling. I'll link that video for you right here. But we started off and started our journey collecting ideas and seeing where we wanted to go. I decided right away we were going to enroll in a charter school, which is an option that we have here in California. And a charter school is basically an umbrella school that you enroll under. So she is enrolled in that school but does all of her schooling at home. And I am her educator, even though I have to report to a credentialed teacher. I'm going to link a video below that goes into better explanation of charter schools to give you a better idea of what they are. But we ended up enrolling her in a charter school. Part of the reason for doing that also was the funding. Charter schools provide a funding, like a flex spending account that you can use for education material and classes, and that was something that definitely appealed to us. Enrolling them in the charter school was the easy part. Then I had to decide what I wanted to teach, how I wanted to teach it, and what was important to me. What was I striving for? So year 1 was a hodgepodge of a whole mess of things. I didn't really know where to start. We did some unit studies, we did some classical studies, we did 5 in a row, which is a great curriculum, but you read the same book every day for 5 days and you do studies based on that book. Super fun if you have little kids, but I'm a very much a rule follower. I like to get my assignment and then I go and I do it. So when a book tells me that I need to read this book to my kids every day, once a day, I do it. Even though my kids are rolling their eyes and they're super irritated to hear the same book again. But I felt like if I didn't do it this way, I was going to fail them. But ultimately what I did was I failed them because I stuck with it so rigorously that it burned them out. What I should have done was find what worked for us, what worked for our family. I should have read the book once, maybe at the beginning of the week, maybe a second time in the middle of the week, or a second time at the end of the week. But I didn't need to read it every day. Here's my point. It's a great curriculum, but like with any curriculum, if it doesn't work for you, don't be afraid to tailor it to your needs. I missed out on using a lot of great curriculum because I was too afraid to to stray from the path. I was too afraid to cross things out and not do them, or miss an assignment and not complete it, in this fear that I would leave gaps in my kids' education. And I missed out on doing a lot of great curriculum because I was so afraid of that. So please learn from my mistake and don't be afraid to customize it and tailor it to what works for you. So year 1 was a whole hodgepodge of different things. Unit studies and 5 in a row and just kind of figuring out where we fit. We did Singapore math, which didn't work for us. But again, I felt like I needed to keep going with it because I didn't know anything different, and I continued on with that into year 2. Year 2, we continued with Singapore, but we also started what's called My Father's World. It was a packaged curriculum, Christ-centered. It was really a great curriculum. We did the U.S. history study, but I again failed my kids because I was so stuck to the path of doing everything on the day that it said it needed to be done. If I didn't complete everything in that day, I felt like I had failed, which I will tell you, now that I know, doing everything in one day is like a rare anomaly that happens in homeschooling. Usually you wake up with a plan of 10 things to do, and you get through thing 1 and you get halfway through thing 2 and realize it's not going to work out, and you scratch the whole list and decide that we're going a different direction because everybody woke up in a bad mood, or somebody had to knock their tooth out, or all of a sudden whatever. You get a flat tire. It happens. Everything seems to work against you when you're homeschooling, and it's not that your kids are against you. It's not even that the world is against you. It's just a new way of figuring out how to go with the flow. So, don't fail your kids. Don't be afraid to change curriculum. Don't be afraid to cross things out, and know that you're not going to get through it all in one day, and that's okay. You are not a failure. They are not going to have gaps in their education, that they can't get into college and it's going to be super dramatic, because that's how I felt. All right. Year 1 was a hodgepodge of thing. Year 2, we did the My Father's World U.S. curriculum. Beautiful curriculum. I highly suggest that you check it out. Year 3, I came across classical conversations. Now, I am not an advocate for classical conversations. I am not an affiliate of classical conversations or any other curriculums that I suggest, but it's what we used and it worked great. It was exactly what I needed. It gave our children that whole world view. It covered all of the subjects within one day, and then I could go home and fill in with extra flair of all the things that they learned. Let me give you an example. They'd go in, we'd meet as a community one day, they would do a science experiment, they would work on art together, they would work on their presentation skills, they would do review of the things that they'd learned, and they would learn new things in each subject. And then I could go home, and each day they could do their math, they could work on their English, because that was not a full curriculum with classical conversations. You have to fill those two things in. But when it came to history, when it came to science, when it came to art, I could do whatever I want, and I could decide to learn more about the artists that we were learning about, or learn more about the country that we had learned about, or I could go a different direction. I loved that it was a great solid backbone and gave me the flexibility and freedom to create my own flair and style and my own way to build upon that. That worked great for us. It worked great until my daughter got into Challenge, which is their 7th and 8th grade year. So again, I have 4 kids. Probably should have said that. So year 3, 4, 5, and 6, they all did the lower level together. Year 7, she moved into the upper level and the younger one stayed in the lower level. And it worked out great, but year 8, it started to get a little too challenging for her and she started to lose her love of learning. And that right there wasn't working out for us. We want our children to have a deep love of learning. We want them to be excited about what they're learning, and she didn't feel that love anymore. So halfway through year 8, we pulled from that curriculum and decided to go a different direction, which worked out perfectly because that was right at the time that we decided to sell our house and to minimize our lives to make us more accessible to travel. Year 9, which we just finished, my oldest daughter just completed her first year in high school and has done a great job. We've done a mixture of different curriculums. She's used The Good and the Beautiful for English. She's used Duolingo and a private class with a teacher for Spanish. She's used Apologia for marine biology. She has used teaching textbooks for her math, And for PE, she did swimming and weightlifting, and that worked great. We just kind of went back to that hodgepodge, but instead of being a hodgepodge of just, I have no idea, I have since learned my kids' learning styles and learned what works best for them. And being in high school, it makes it a little bit easier for them to have a say in what they want to do, what looks appealing for them, and what they're excited to learn. Because if they're excited to learn it, there's a better chance they're going to jump into it every day with a better attitude. For my other 3 kids, we also pulled them out of classical conversations, and this year's been a little bit of a hodgepodge for them as well. We've done the good and the beautiful for English, science, and history, and they've done teaching textbooks for math. Teaching textbooks is an online program, so it works really great as long as we have internet access. But if we go spans while we're traveling without internet access, it's okay. They just catch up when they have the opportunity to. Sometimes that means working on the weekends or working a little into summer as we are now, but that's okay. In our family, we typically work through the summer. Even though it's not a full load of classes through the summer, we kind of cut back. I do continue to ask my children to do math every day, reading every day, and English if they haven't finished their English book. Some people are okay with stopping mid-year, and that's okay, and not finishing the book. But again, I like to make sure they finish their English book and we can start off fresh on the next year and then start with the next level that they're supposed to be in. That's what works for us. I've found that when they take long breaks between math and English, it's the hardest to catch them back up in. So we just do a little bit during the summer. It's not super rigorous, but they wake up in the morning, they do those 2 things, and then it's off. Is it flexible? Absolutely. It's always flexible. All year long, it's flexible. But we came up with 3 goals that we wanted to focus on. These are our whys. We came up with 3 things that were our end goals that we were focusing on. And I try and keep those things in mind when I'm learning to be flexible, or I'm trying to give myself a little bit of mercy in our schedule. Number 1, we wanted our children to be Christ-centered. We wanted them to know that everything they had and everything that is came from God. So we make sure to focus on scripture study, and the curriculums that we use are Christian-based curriculums. Number 2, we wanted them to have a service heart. We want them to focus on serving others and how they can benefit the lives of those around them by serving. So we do a service project at least once a week. Some of these projects are longer service projects that might take us months to complete. Some are just ones that we do once and we're done. Others are things that we report to each week to help with. But whatever it is, we try and help out in the community wherever we are through service. Number 3, we want our children to have a whole world view. We want them to see that they're part of something greater, part of something bigger. This is also why we sold our house a year and a half ago and minimized down to nearly nothing, so that it left us the availability to be able to travel and explore new things. We didn't see the logic in having a house to take care of when we would rather spend our time on the road traveling and exploring new things. Having a house for us didn't feel like a sanctuary to come home to. It felt more like an anchor weighing us down. So we sold it, we got rid of most of our stuff, minimized down to the bare minimum, and now we spend our time exploring new areas of the country and exploring new regions of the world. This is one way that we find that we're able to enrich our children's homeschooling experience. Now, I understand that this may seem crazy to some people, absolutely unobtainable to others, and I get it. Now, I'm not saying you should go and you should sell your house and get rid of everything and live a lifestyle like a nomad like we did. But there's got to be something that excites you. And whatever it is, no matter how outside of the box it is, do it. Don't be afraid to write your own story. Don't be afraid to change your curriculum, to edit things that work for you. Find what works for your family, because that's what homeschooling is all about. I hope you can find some inspiration in our story, and I hope you can find some inspiration in the rest of the stories that are on our channel. Check out WanderStruck.Family for more stories like mine from homeschool families, moms, dads, caregivers all over the country, so that you can find what works in your story. See you later.